Hey guys, it's Rift here. So the new Spider-Man show has been out for a few days now, and the reception behind it is quite mixed. I feel like you either like it, you think it's mid, or you think it's the worst thing ever. I've yet to watch the show, however I wasn't particularly impressed with the trailers. However, a few friends have mentioned that the show is actually not too bad, so maybe I'll give it a shot. However, the YouTuber we're going to be reacting to today hated the show so much that he thinks that Spider-Man as a concept is over, dead and buried, but 6 feet beneath the earth. Let's take a look at what they have to say.
I'm a bit late to the party on this one, but your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, the brand new upcoming animated TV show, has had a few trailers and teasers released. And to no one's surprise, it looks like total garbage. Just from searching around YouTube, you'll find people acting shocked to how crappy and how woke it looks.
Oh dear, it's one of these people. I want to make it absolutely clear that gender swapping or race swapping certain characters by themselves isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you write the characters really well. I've yet to see the Spider-Man show, so I don't know if they do that. However, I feel like what this person is going to mention is that because the characters were gender swapped or race swapped at all, that instantly makes them bad, when this isn't the case.
But I'm not really going to be one of those people who acts like this is some new concept. The harsh truth is, Spider-Man has kind of been ruined for years. And we've all kind of been coping and wishing in the back of our mind that Spider-Man returns to his former glory.
Hey. Petey's always been a bit clumsy.
You know me, clumsy Petey Parker.
Just consider it a good deed from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. That's me, by the way. I'm Spider-Man.
Wrong. Obviously those clips are out of context, so I can't comment on the actual episodes and what they have to offer, but from what I've seen at least, from those specific clips that he showed, he doesn't look too bad. He kind of reminds me of Spectacular Spider-Man, where he's like quippy and snarky, but then as Peter Parker he's very nerdy and what have you. If anything, it's just the art style I'm not a fan of. I just prefer how cartoons used to look. I'm not a huge fan of how they look nowadays, but again, that's not a fault of the show, that's just a me personal issue.
So I will get to how bad your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man looks in a second. But first, I'm gonna have to address that this issue with Spider-Man is nothing new. So you could ask yourself, when did all the troubles start for Spider-Man? Was it when Tom Holland took over? Or when the Spider-Verse movies came out? Or when in the comics, Peter Parker was turned into a literal
I'm in the mindset that a character doesn't necessarily have a downfall, it's more so dependent on the adaptation. Take a character like Superman, for example. I was never big on Superman growing up, however in retrospect I appreciate the animated series as well as the Justice League Unlimited show. However, the live action portrayals of Superman didn't really resonate with me, especially with Henry Cavill's portrayal. I understand that he has a massive fan base, and no discredit to the guy whatsoever, you can't fault his work ethic. However, I never resonated with his films in the DCEU specifically, which was a shame, because again, I like Henry Cavill, I like his work in The Witcher. However, I really liked Superman and Lois and Tyler Hoechlin's portrayal of the Man of Steel, so I think it's just an adaptation by adaptation basis. And then taking a look at Spider-Man. I wasn't a huge fan of Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man, as I don't think he's very accurate at all, not to mention I don't think he acts like Spider-Man in the slightest. However, at the same time, I'm not going to fault the entire Spider-Man IP just because of that adaptation. Also, it's pretty weird that you bring up the Spider-Verse movies when pretty much everyone agrees that they're great.
But unfortunately, it does go before that. So I do respect Andrew Garfield's portrayal of Peter Parker, especially in The Amazing Spider-Man Part 2. But the problems we're facing now date back to that movie. I'm all about comic accuracy, and Andrew Garfield's movies failed in that department a lot. Even though we got to see Peter Parker sporting a goddamn Ramones t-shirt, I still think that his portrayal wasn't the best. But the real issue wasn't Andrew Garfield or the changes to the character's design. Instead, it was the race swap that we let go under the radar. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Jamie Foxx plays Electro, and no matter what way you look at it, this race swap cannot be justified. You could say that Electro is just a small character, he's a villain for Spider-Man to face. It doesn't matter what race he is. Exactly, so why change it?
Ignoring for a second the fact that you debunked your entire argument with the whole, oh, why does it matter? Oh, it doesn't, so why the fuck are you bringing it up as a point? However, I'm going to be a bit careful with how I say this because obviously I've offended people in the past with how I've said this sort of thing. I'm in the mindset that race swapping and gender swapping a character isn't a problem as long as it's treated with respect. For example, if you were to take literally everything about Peter Parker and keep it the same, but then you just randomly made him a woman, it wouldn't make sense because a straight white woman would be falling in love with women and it just wouldn't make any sense. Obviously you can have women who are Spider-Men, that's not what I'm saying. But the point is that if you're making that kind of character, you have to treat it with respect. However, a good example is the Ancient One in the MCU, since yes, they made her a woman when in the comics she is a man. However, at the same time, no one gave a fuck because her portrayal was really well, she was treated with respect, and she is quite beloved, even though she only showed up in 2 MCU films. Now moving on to Electro and what you had to say about him. Electro being black in these films I don't think is a legitimate problem, because again, it's an adaptation by adaptation basis, and they actually take the character in a more sympathetic light, which again is quite refreshing. They make him very different, sure, and yeah, he's not comic accurate, but at the same time, they do treat the character with respect, and they take him in a different direction, which I don't see why this is so bad. Like, if you were to criticize the character of Jamie Foxx's Electro, I would totally be fine with that. But the fact that you're homing in on his skin color specifically is very telling of you as an individual.
The other argument you might see when it comes to race swaps is, well, if the writing is good, I don't care.
Yes, that is exactly the argument I just made. It should begin and end with, is the writing good or bad? The writing is good? Okay, that's fine, you know, it's a different version of the character and I'm all for that. Is the writing bad? Well, then I can't really like the character, nor can I appreciate the writing.
Well, it didn't do that either, because he was literally the worst part about The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
That's bullshit. There's no way that Electro was worse than Rhino. Like, at the very least, Electro actually looks very comic accurate when he has the blue effect, and when he actually gets his suit. Not to mention the action scenes with him are some of the best in any Spider-Man movie. Fuck off, do you think that he is the worst part of TASM 2?
And that's the thing, a lot of people didn't actually mention it, or talk about it, or call it out. And if they did, then maybe these race swaps wouldn't have continued.
Dude, have you been living under a rock for the last 15 years? Like, people have been calling this shit out, especially with Disney where it actually negatively affects the writing. TASM 2 didn't have particularly good writing, especially compared to TASM 1 or the Raimi trilogy, but again, that had fuck all to do with Electro. If anything, Electro was handled pretty well in TASM 2, and he was handled even better in No Way Home. I really don't understand your point here.
I don't know, maybe I'm just hoping for a better world where the fans might have stood up and said something.
I dream of a world where everyone is equal.
I don't know, that's the first clip that came to my mind when he said that shit. Like, I wish for a better world where everyone's equal. He wishes for a better world where people had stood up against race-swapping fictional characters. I'll let that sentence speak for itself.
But really, would it have made a difference? Because the people who own these corporations like Marvel and Disney and Fox aren't really the best people. Now, we won't talk too much about that because that's an entirely different video. But it does have to be addressed that people who agree with me are fighting a losing battle because they're going up against these companies that are run by people who want to bring in race swaps, who want to eradicate the wholesomeness and the hopefulness of superheroes.
It's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
I find it hard to take your argument seriously when TASM 2 is something you were just talking about, but TASM 2 is living proof that your theory doesn't make sense. It is indeed possible to have hopeful, pure superheroes that inspire others, whilst also having race or gender swaps in the same movie. You want another example? Take a look at Doctor Strange.
And that brings us to the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, which every single one of them is garbage.
Oh, you might ruffle some feathers with that statement. I think that Spider-Man Homecoming has passable writing, but I think that Far From Home is terrible, and No Way Home is pretty much a film that is based on nostalgia. When you look at the actual writing and the assessment of each character, it's not great. Like, I think Tom Holland's trilogy is way worse than the Raimi trilogy, and his films have kinda got worse over time for me. That being said, I don't think that his films negatively affected the Spider-Man IP as a whole.
There literally isn't one good film out of the trilogy. And if you thought The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was bad, Tom Holland's movies ramped it up to 11. And from the first one, Homecoming, there's already 3 race swaps that I can name off the top of my head.
Again, race swapping characters is irrelevant if they are written well. Please go and touch some grass.
With Peter's best friend, which instead of being Harry Osborn, is Ned Leeds. You know, like the hobgoblin guy? The white guy. He's not some big fat Samoan dude or whatever the hell he is. So that's one.
What's wrong with Ned Leeds' character in Spider-Man Homecoming? Like, are you going to criticize his writing, the interactions he has with Peter, the interactions he has with the other classmates, his personality, his character flaws, his humor, like all of these other things? The fact that he literally helps Peter to save the day? Oh no, we're not going to talk about any of these. Yeah, he's a fat Asian guy. Gotcha.
Then you have Liz Allen, which is the love interest of Homecoming, which I do respect, because if you read the original comics, Liz Allen was Peter Parker's first love interest before MJ or Gwen. So I do like them sticking to the source material, but oh yeah, she's black. So they're not actually sticking to the source material, because it's a total race swap for no good reason.
Again, completely glosses over Liz Allen's character in Homecoming. We're just gonna ignore all of this and just focus on her skin color. Like, I'm honestly biting my tongue here. I don't want to say what I'm thinking, but I think you guys can kind of guess what I'm thinking at this point. Like, I honestly couldn't imagine being in the mindset where you're unironically gonna criticize a character, not for the character themselves or their personality, but just for the fact that they were made a different skin color or race or gender. It just seems so pathetic, in all honesty.
And then we have the third race swap, which is the worst of them all. You have MJ, which was once this great character that helped Peter throughout the years as a girlfriend, then a wife that helped him, was literally the center point of Kraven's last hunt. Now she's Zendaya.
Technically, she's not even Mary Jane Watson, she's called Michelle Jones in the MCU. So you can argue that whilst yes, she fills the gap that Mary Jane Watson would have filled, she is also her own character. And again, why is this a problem? Like, you're not gonna criticize or talk about her writing at all? You're not gonna praise the writing or any of this? I find it all the more stupid and hypocritical when you yourself praise the fact that they're sticking to the source material by making Liz Allen Peter's first love interest, but you also don't praise the fact that MJ is in this film. She clearly has an interest in Peter, yet he friend zones her because he prefers Liz. Like, surely that would be, you know, comic accurate based on what you said you wanted, but you can't keep that same energy and fairly assess the writing. You're just focusing on the fact that she's Zendaya, which I don't see how that's an insult since she's a pretty good actress. Incels unite, I guess?
I don't think I have to say much more. Zendaya looks like a 12-year-old boy who lives in the slums of Brazil or something.
Ooh, we're just gonna move on very swiftly from that comment.
She doesn't look the way Mary Jane Watson should look. Just look at any illustration of the character. John Romita Sr., Todd McFarlane, or the controversial but still great J. Scott Campbell.
You don't look like a punching bag, but I'm sure you'd get the job done.
MJ does not look like Zendaya, and they do everything they can in all 3 of these movies to separate her from the original character.
Aside from the parts where she supports Peter Parker as a girlfriend, kind of like how she did in Kraven's Last Hunt, which is what you preferred, I would ask you to keep that same energy, but I think you'd blow up.
She's just this ugly bitch going around punching people in the nuts.
A crushing criticism from Brad Pitt over here.
Making smart comments towards everybody in the film. That is not Mary Jane Watson.
Yeah, no shit, it's Michelle Jones. What's your point?
Yet none of the fans called it out. Then there's the Spider-Verse movies that I could do a full hour-long video on about how retarded they are. Miles Morales is not a good character. None of the films are good. Stop overrating them.
I'm not implying anything here, but I think it's very telling of a person when he says that the Spider-Verse films are bad, and he only mentions the black character. I'm not implying anything, I just think it's weird.
And as a little side note, let's look into the people who made it, and one of them is a guy called, I don't know, Randy or Rodney Rothman, and he believes that Peter Parker is Jewish.
Chill out.
Have the maturity to separate the artist from the artwork. Like, that's your entire point dismissed. Can you give me another one?
Once again, stay away from comic books and these characters. Stop injecting your own personal crap onto these characters. Peter Parker is not Jewish just because you are. And that's all these people want to do.
It's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
They want to make Spider-Man black. They want to make MJ some ugly, racially ambiguous person. And all of that bullcrap brings us up to your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And just take a look at it for yourself.
Somebody help me! He's running, grab him!
So Harry Osborn is some black tranny.
If there was any doubt in my mind that this guy wasn't actually a racist piece of shit and he was just like being edgy for the sake of edgy, yeah, no, that's completely washed away now since he refers to Harry Osborn as a black tranny. Friendly reminder that referring to someone as a tranny is a derogative slur. So yeah, you're a fucked up individual for saying that shit. Especially as the Superman and Lois show proved that whilst yes, Jimmy Olsen was made a black character, again, his writing was pretty good and his character was likable. So why can't we keep that same energy for this?
And Norman Osborn is also black, and Peter Parker, instead of being the character that Steve Ditko and Stan Lee originally envisioned him as, is now a soy boy that is almost more similar to an anime protagonist. I'm not even gonna give this show my time.
So you're gonna criticize the show because of out of context clips that were shown in the trailer? My god, you're special. Like, if you're gonna criticize a piece of artwork, at the very least have the honesty to watch the fucking thing that you're trying to criticize.
Why would you even talk about this? The show is a dumpster fire. 2 people are gonna watch it. It's gonna get cancelled after a season, and then we're all gonna go back to living our lives. Spider-Man is not Andrew Garfield. Spider-Man is not Tom Holland. Spider-Man is not Miles Morales. Spider-Man is not whatever the hell this is. Spider-Man is the original comics, video games, cartoons, and the excellent Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy.
I love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy as much as the next person. It's far from perfect, but I respect it all the same. However, I find it ridiculously hypocritical that he's willing to say that that trilogy is fantastic, even though the trilogy isn't accurate to the main comics. For example, Peter doesn't have web shooters, he has artificial webs, and the first supervillain he encounters is the Green Goblin, when in the Steve Ditko comics, I think it was the Vulture, the first person he fought, but don't quote me on that.
With the best portrayal of Peter Parker on screen. Notice how although Sam Raimi might be of a certain religious or ethnic background, he doesn't try to inject it onto Spider-Man.
No, what Sam Raimi actually did was he changed different parts about Spider-Man by giving him organic web shooters because he believed that it was unrealistic for a college student or a high school student to be able to create these fucking web shooters.
Because it's a character that you're working off of, that you're adapting from a comic book. You don't come in and go, oh wait, I'm this in real life, so now the character has to be that also. And that's why I'm kind of hopeful and I don't really care. Because who is actually gonna watch this?
If you don't really care, then why did you make this video? Also, you kind of debunked your entire premise by acknowledging that, yeah, it's an adaptation. They can take the foundations that were laid in the comics and then make their own version of it. And if that means changing the gender or the ethnicity or whatever, then surely that shouldn't be a problem to you because it's an adaptation. But nope, make the video, because why not?
It's gonna die out like all the other products that these companies are putting out. And maybe in the coming times, the entire world can wake up and reject this, so we don't have to be subjected to it over and over. Because trust me, that will happen. We will get to a point where these companies can't afford to put out shows and movies like this because they're not going to make money off of them. So stay away from this modern tripe. Don't give your time to these corrupt producers, companies, and directors. And go back and read some of the great comics of Spider-Man. And if you got a problem with that, go complain to your boyfriend.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. I was just working on my bingo card. I mean, we have comments about race swapping, we have him using tranny in a derogatory context, and we can assume that he has homophobic tendencies because he immediately lashes out in an aggressive manner and says, go complain to your boyfriend. So yeah, I got a 3 in a row. Do I win a prize now? Maybe some brand new Puffer merchandise for 15% off all orders until the 7th of February? No? No prize? Oh, well, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video at least, and I hope that you can subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.